Alex Turner, a young and ambitious analyst at the prestigious Blackstone Capital, was known for his uncanny ability to spot market anomalies. His latest discovery was a peculiar pattern in the trading data of one of the firm's largest clients, a secretive hedge fund called the Quantum Group. The numbers didn't add up. There were too many coincidences, too many trades that seemed to defy logic. Intrigued, Alex began digging deeper. He spent countless hours poring over financial statements, analyzing market trends, and piecing together a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each new piece. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that something sinister was afoot. One evening, as Alex was preparing to leave the office, he received a call from Olivia Carter, a seasoned financial journalist with a reputation for uncovering corporate scandals. She had heard rumors about irregularities at the Quantum Group and was interested in learning more. "I've been following your work," Olivia said. "You have a knack for finding the hidden stories. I think we might be able to collaborate on something big." Alex was hesitant at first. He wasn't sure he wanted to get involved in anything that could potentially jeopardize his career. But Olivia was persuasive. She assured him that she would protect his identity and that together they could expose the truth. Intrigued, Alex agreed to meet with Olivia the following day. As they sat in a dimly lit cafe, Alex shared his findings about the Quantum Group. Olivia listened intently, her eyes narrowing as she took in the details. "This is bigger than I thought," she said. "It sounds like they might be involved in insider trading, maybe even market manipulation." Alex nodded. "That's what I'm afraid of. And the worst part is the people behind the Quantum Group are very powerful. They have connections in high places." Olivia took a sip of her coffee. "We need to be careful," she said. "If they find out we're on to them, they could try to silence us." As they continued to discuss their plan, a sense of urgency began to settle over them. They knew they were facing a formidable enemy, but they were also determined to expose the truth. The fate of countless investors might depend on it. The next day, Olivia started her own investigation, using her extensive network of contacts to gather information on the Quantum Group. Meanwhile, Alex went back to his job at Blackstone Capital, biding his time and looking for any additional evidence that could help their case. Their paths intertwined as they shared their findings each evening over encrypted calls. The picture they pieced together grew increasingly alarming. The Quantum Group had been using their insider knowledge to make billions at the expense of unsuspecting investors. One name kept popping up in their research: Daniel "Danny" Black, the elusive billionaire with a controlling interest in the hedge fund. His history was littered with whispers of corruption and illegal dealings. It was clear that he was the linchpin in this elaborate scheme. But as they dug deeper, they stumbled upon something even more alarming. The Quantum Group was not just a rogue hedge fund. It was part of a much larger, shadowy organization known as the Syndicate. This group of powerful individuals and institutions had their hands in everything from stock manipulation to money laundering, and they were ruthless in protecting their interests. Alex and Olivia felt the walls closing in. They had uncovered a conspiracy that went all the way to the top, and they knew that the Syndicate would not go down without a fight. The financial world was about to be rocked by a scandal that would make history, and they were the only ones who could stop it. But first, they had to get the proof into the right hands. They decided to approach a trusted regulatory agent, someone who was known for taking on the big guys and winning. The risk was high, but so were the stakes. If they didn't act now, the Syndicate might very well pull off the heist of the century, and the consequences for the global financial system would be catastrophic. The tension grew palpable as they set a meeting with the agent. They knew that once they presented their evidence, there would be no turning back. They would be marked as enemies by some of the most dangerous people in the world. But the thought of letting these criminals continue their greedy rampage was unbearable. As they waited in the lobby of the government building, heartbeats echoing in their chests, Alex couldn't help but wonder if they had made the right decision. But when Olivia squeezed his hand reassuringly, he knew that together they could bring down the house of cards that Danny Black had built. The door to the agent's office opened, and a stern-looking woman beckoned them inside. This was it, the moment of truth. They had to be convincing, they had to be precise, and they had to be ready for whatever came next. As they stepped over the threshold, Alex felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was the beginning of the endgame. The agent, Mrs. Castillo, listened intently as they laid out their evidence. She was a no-nonsense type, with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through the layers of deceit surrounding the quantum group. Alex could see her mind racing, piecing together the puzzle they had brought her. "This is serious," she said, tapping a pen against the desk. "But you realize the kind of power you're up against, don't you?" Olivia nodded. "We do, but we can't just sit back and let them ruin lives for their own gain." Mrs. Castillo studied them for a long moment before finally speaking. "All right, I'll take this to my superiors. But until we can verify everything, you two need to stay under the radar. These people are notorious for their reach." With a heavy heart, Alex and Olivia left the building, knowing that the real battle was just beginning. They had to be careful. Every step they took from here on out could be their last. Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly, passing information back and forth with Mrs. Castillo. They had to be meticulous, ensuring that every detail was corroborated and every lead followed. The Syndicate was notorious for its ability to cover its tracks, and they couldn't afford any missteps. One evening, as Alex was leaving the office, he noticed a black sedan parked outside the building. The same car had been there for the past few days, its tinted windows offering no clue as to who was inside. A shiver ran down his spine. Were they being watched? He quickened his pace, his eyes darting around for any signs of danger. The city streets, once a place of comfort, now felt like a minefield. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every stranger a potential threat. He had to be careful. The Syndicate was notorious for its swift and silent retribution. When Alex reached his apartment, he found a USB drive taped to his door. His heart racing, he slid it into his computer and watched as encrypted files began to unravel before his eyes. It came with a message: "You're getting too close." He knew then that they were onto him. The game had changed. It was no longer just about exposing a financial scandal. It was about survival. He called Olivia immediately, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "We need to go to ground," he said. "They know we're onto them." Olivia's voice was calm, but he could hear the fear beneath it. "We've come too far to back down now. We have to trust Mrs. Castillo." Alex nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "You're right. We can't let them win." The next morning, they disappeared, going off the grid to work on the story that could bring down the Syndicate. As they delved deeper into the shadows, they knew that every second counted. The clock was ticking, and the enemy was closing in. They set up a makeshift office in a secluded Airbnb, using burner phones and encrypted emails to communicate with Mrs. Castillo. The walls were thin, and every creak in the floorboards made them jump. Paranoia grew like ivy around them, but it was a necessary defense mechanism in their new reality. Days turned into weeks, and the evidence grew stronger. They had enough to take down the quantum group, but they needed more to implicate Danny Black and the Syndicate. The pressure mounted, and the fear of discovery was a constant weight on their shoulders. Then a breakthrough. They uncovered a secret meeting between Danny and several high-ranking officials, discussing the manipulation of a major tech IPO. The implications were staggering. This was the smoking gun they needed, the key to unlocking the entire conspiracy. They had to move fast. The IPO was only a week away, and if they didn't act, the Syndicate would make billions, and their crimes would be buried under the guise of market volatility. Alex and Olivia compiled their findings into a damning report, ready to hand it over to Mrs. Castillo. But as they left the safety of their hideout, they were ambushed. The black sedan from before was now a SWAT team, surrounding them with weapons drawn. Mrs. Castillo emerged from the shadows, her expression a mix of regret and determination. "I'm sorry," she said, "but you've gone too far. You're in over your heads." The world spun around Alex as he realized the betrayal. The woman they had trusted was a double agent, working for the very people they were trying to expose. The game had taken a deadly turn, and now they were the hunted. Olivia's eyes met his, and she whispered, "Run." They bolted through the alleyways, adrenaline pumping as they evaded their pursuers. They had to get the report to the press, to someone who could publish the truth before it was too late. As they reached the street, a car screeched to a halt beside them. The window rolled down, and a familiar face peered out. It was one of Olivia's sources, a man who had provided her with crucial information in the past. "Get in," he said, urgency in his voice. They dove into the car, and it sped away, leaving the SWAT team in their dust. But the relief was short-lived. They knew the Syndicate wouldn't give up so easily. The chase was on, and the stakes had never been higher. Their new ally, a man named Marcus, was a former insider who had turned against the Syndicate. He had seen firsthand the destruction they wrought and was willing to risk everything to bring them down. Together, the trio raced against the clock, dodging the relentless pursuit of Danny Black's enforcers. Marcus had a plan. He knew of a safe house, a place where they could lay low and regroup. But the journey was fraught with danger, and the Syndicate had eyes everywhere. As they approached the safe house, hidden in a nondescript suburban neighborhood, they saw the glow of sirens in the distance. It was a warning, a declaration of war. The Syndicate had found them. They had no choice but to stand their ground. The battle was about to begin, and there was no turning back. The future of the financial world and their own lives hung in the balance. The only question was who would come out on top. Alex, Olivia, and Marcus barricaded themselves inside the safe house, preparing for the inevitable siege. They had enough firepower to hold off an army, but they knew the Syndicate wouldn't be deterred by mere bullets. The Quantum Group had the resources to bring down buildings if they wanted to. As the night grew darker, flames grew closer. The Syndicate had torched the neighborhood, creating a fiery barricade to trap them. Alex could feel the heat through the windows, a stark reminder of the ruthlessness of their adversaries. Olivia, ever the journalist, took the lead. She crafted a message detailing their findings and sent it to every major news outlet and financial regulator she could think of. If they didn't make it out of this alive, at least the truth would. The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. The Syndicate had arrived. The trio took their positions, guns drawn, ready to fight for their lives. The house trembled as a SWAT team burst through the doors. Marcus stepped into the fray, his eyes cold and determined. He had been a part of this world once, and now he was going to bring it down. He took out two men with swift, precise movements that spoke of years of training. Alex and Olivia weren't far behind. They had no combat experience, but desperation made them fierce. They fought tooth and nail, using every piece of furniture as a shield, every kitchen utensil as a weapon. The battle was intense, a harshness of gunfire and shattering glass. Each moment felt like an eternity as they dodged bullets and hurled insults at their attackers. The house was falling apart around them, but they had to hold on. In the chaos, Alex spotted an opportunity. He dashed towards the back door, the USB drive clutched in his hand. If he could just get outside, he could upload the evidence to the cloud. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. He took a deep breath and sprinted into the night, the flames licking at his heels. He could hear the roar of the fire and the sirens in the distance. The world was collapsing around him, but he had to keep going. Just as he reached the edge of the inferno, a hand grabbed him, yanking him back into the shadows. He turned, expecting the worst, but instead he saw Mrs. Castillo, her face streaked with soot and her eyes filled with regret. "You have to trust me," she panted. "I've been playing both sides. I never wanted you to get hurt. I've been working to take them down from the inside." Alex stared at her, unsure if he could believe her. But the look in her eyes was earnest, and they had no other choice. He handed her the USB drive, and she vanished into the night, leaving him with a flicker of hope. The fire raged on, a symbol of the chaos they had unleashed. But amidst the destruction, Alex knew that they had sparked a revolution. The truth was out there now, waiting to be found. And as long as people like them were willing to fight, the Syndicate could never truly win. Mrs. Castillo had given them a head start, but they couldn't stay in the burning city for long. Marcus knew a way out, a secret tunnel system that had been built by the Syndicate themselves, a contingency plan for their own escape. It was ironic that it would now serve as their path to freedom. They descended into the bowels of the city, the air thick with smoke and the smell of burning rubber. The tunnels were claustrophobic, and the darkness was pierced only by the beams of their flashlights. They could hear the distant wail of sirens, a reminder that their time was running out. Alex's mind raced. Would the evidence be enough? Would the world believe them? And what of Danny Black? He was a man who had evaded justice for too long, a specter in the world of finance. But now, they had a chance to bring him into the light. They emerged into the cool night air miles away from the carnage. The city was a silhouette of flames against the horizon. It was a stark reminder of the power they were up against. But as they stepped into the shadows, ready to vanish into the night, Alex felt a strange sense of calm. They had exposed the Syndicate's plot to manipulate the tech IPO, and now it was a race against time to bring down the rest of their empire. The information was in the hands of the authorities and the press. The dominoes were falling, and soon the entire financial world would know the truth. Their journey had just begun. They had to stay ahead of the Syndicate's reach, but they had allies now. Whistleblowers, insiders, and those who had suffered at the hands of the powerful. Together, they would form a network of truth seekers determined to dismantle the corruption that had taken root in the highest echelons of finance. The next days were a blur of safe houses and encrypted messages. The story broke, and the markets trembled. The Syndicate's stocks plummeted, and their empire began to crumble. Arrests were made, and the public's trust in the financial system was shaken to its core. But the most satisfying moment came when they heard the news of Danny Black's arrest. He had been found in a luxurious penthouse, surrounded by his ill-gotten gains. The man who had eluded justice for so long was finally facing the consequences of his actions. For Alex and Olivia, it was a victory, but it was also the end of their partnership. They had started as two individuals, brought together by fate and a shared sense of justice. But now, they had to go their separate ways. Alex was offered a position at a government watchdog agency, while Olivia was invited to join an elite team of investigative journalists. They said their goodbyes, the bond between them stronger than ever. They had taken on the monsters of Wall Street and won. But they both knew that the fight was far from over. There would always be more to uncover, more battles to wage. But they had lit a beacon in the darkness, and it would guide others to continue the fight. As they parted, Alex looked back at the city, the flames now just a distant memory. He knew that the scars of the Syndicate's crimes would remain, but he also knew that he had played a part in starting the healing process. And that was enough to keep him going. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories. Give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.